Welcome, everyone, to the Michigan International Speedway, and NASCAR Nextel Cup practice is just a few moments away. A beautiful sunny day. Jeff Gordon is your most recent winner on the Nextel Cup Series, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. announced that he soon will become Gordon's teammate. Now the speculation can begin. Who is going to land the services of Kyle Busch for next season? Hello, everybody. I'm John Roberts here on the speed stage. Let's take a quick look at what's coming up on the menu today. It is a tasty one. We got you covered all weekend long as normal on speed. It's Nextel Cup practice in a matter of moments. Cup qualifying at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. 49 cars for 43 positions. Then the ARCA 200 trackside in Michigan with Bobby Labonte and Jeff Green. Let's now go up to the broadcast booth. Join Steve Burns, Jeff Hammond, and Larry McReynolds for Nextel Cup practice.
Thanks a lot, Matt. A lot of questions to be answered for that scenario. Meanwhile, practice just underway here at Michigan. Good morning from the Michigan International Speedway. The Irish Hills. We're in Brooklyn, Michigan at the 2-mile super speedway, where the big story broke this week. Dale Earnhardt Jr. has announced that he is leaving the team that his father started years ago, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, to drive for Hendrick Motorsports. We apologize for audio difficulties just a moment ago, but glad you're with us. For more on Dale Earnhardt Jr., let's go to Matt Yoakum.
Steve, Dale Jr. and Rick Hendrick answered pretty much the biggest question hanging out there in this sport that we've had for probably the past 2.5 decades. But what that answer left out there was, what's going to happen to all the core guys on Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s team? Guys like Tony Eury Jr., his cousin and crew chief, who's been with Jr. for all but 8 months of his entire NASCAR career. You've got guys like Kevin Tubier-Pinel, Tony Gibson, Jay Guarneri, guys that may not be household names, but are big key performers with Jr. So the big question is there room at the inn, or do they stay at Dale Earnhardt Incorporated? We'll be following those storylines from here until probably the end of the season. For more on the driver's side of the domino effect, let's go to Lindsay Zarniak.
Thank you, Matt, and you're exactly right, because now the torch has been passed, and driver of the number 5 car, Kyle Busch, now becomes the hottest free agent in the garage since he learned last week that he will not be driving for Hendrick Motorsports next year. But I talked to his crew just a minute ago, and these guys said we're not worried about all of that. Obviously, Kyle can go anywhere he wants, but right now we're focusing on making this car right for Michigan to continue our quest for a championship. Steve.
Thank you very much, Lindsay, and good morning again, everybody. Steve Burns with Jeff Hammond and Larry McReynolds. And Jeff, my first question is, you had thought all along that Dale Earnhardt Jr. would wind up with Joe Gibbs Racing. Are you surprised by this announcement?
Well, I am somewhat surprised. I mean, the fact is that he did go to Hendrick Motorsports. I think it was a great choice. I'm not arguing that point right there at all, but I think a lot of this would not have happened if it hadn't been for Kyle Busch exiting Hendrick Motorsports and then opening up that place for Dale Earnhardt Jr. Because remember, Rick Hendrick said, I do not have a place for him at this point in time. I'm satisfied with my drivers, but here recently some things didn't work out right. So guess what? Seat became available, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. filled it.
And, you know, the third part of this puzzle that we've not talked a lot about this week, we've talked about Rick Hendrick, we've talked about Dale Earnhardt Jr., but is Kyle Busch. I think sometimes we forget that he's only 21, 22 years old. And I say this with hesitation. In fact, I think I'll duck when I say it. He's won twice as many races over the last 2.5 years that Dale Earnhardt Jr. But I think no matter how many races, how many championships this young man would win, he will always be the third string at Hendrick Motorsports behind Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon. Not in equipment, but I think just in popularity. There is no question Kyle Busch will be a hot commodity. He can go to an operation and make a huge difference, and I think he can go somewhere and he can actually be the top driver in an organization.
You see Jimmy Johnson on pit road as practice has started. But now, Larry, I want to get back to what Jeff Heyman brought up. And it is true. Rick Hendrick said there is no room at the end. Kyle Busch, we thought, was solidly in the 5. Casey Mears in the 25. Jimmy Johnson in the 48. And Jeff Gordon in the 24. So what happened to that number 5 car?
I think it was a multitude of things. And I think a lot had to do with maybe not necessarily things that happen on the racetrack. I think one thing that I totally disagree, I love someone being honest. But you've got a brand new car that NASCAR is putting out there, the car tomorrow. You've got guys at the shop that are working their guts out. You win the first car tomorrow race, you get out of the car and say, this car sucks. Not the right place and the right time to say that.
Which is exactly what Kyle Busch said after winning at Bristol. And quite frankly, Kyle Busch, he was quoted as saying yesterday that this is all news to me. In other words, Rick Hendrick made it sound like, well, you know, we just couldn't come into agreement, but Kyle Busch disputing that account of it.
All I know is it'll be interesting to see about the rest of the story as it kind of unwinds. I mean, it's going to have a different twist. It's got everybody talking in the garage area. But, Steve, let's face the facts. We're here at Michigan right now. The main thing is we take a look at Jeremy Mayfield. This man has to make the race here. Can Ryan Newman stay on his string as far as poles are concerned, and can he break through and win a race? And today, this racetrack, I think, is going to take a measure of everybody because, guys, let's face it, it's hot and it's slick at this big 2-mile racetrack. And when it gets hot, Larry Mack, it's hard to get a grip of this place.
I think that's going to make qualifying very interesting, and especially this 400-mile race on TNT Sunday very interesting.
Hey, guys, do you think it was any kind of a foreshadowing when Dale Earnhardt Jr. got into that 5 car at the Texas Motor Speedway? Jr. got into an accident in the race, and Kyle Busch actually left the racetrack. He said it was a miscommunication. There's Kyle Busch. And Junior said, hey, I'll drive that car.
Oh, I think it turned out that way. You talk about, and Steve, I'm going to go back and I'm going to remind you guys, what have I been saying all year long? This is a twilight zone year. Things that happen are so bizarre, things you cannot predict. And you see the fact that Dale Earnhardt Jr. gets in that 5 car, and everybody was talking about, hey, is this something that's going to happen? And everybody kind of fluffed it off. Well, it's funny how things kind of work its way back around, and now he is actually going to be driving a Hendrick car. Not necessarily the 5 car, because that's still up in the air. The numbers, sponsors, all those things right there, but he will be driving that particular car out of that stable next year.
Greg Biffle in the 16 car out of Roush Fenway Racing. There was an announcement this morning that Aflac, a supplemental insurance company, will sponsor that Cup car in 7 or 8 races, and then also sponsor some of the other drivers in the Roush stable as well.
See, Matt Kenseth right here finished 8th at Pocono last week. Across the board, even with Kenseth having a decent run last week, Carl Edwards, the Roush Fenway cars, they were just off at Pocono. And Greg Biffle, I don't know that I've ever seen him that far off qualifying, practice, and racing, but I know Greg is glad to get here because he actually had 2 top 10 finishes last year in that 16 car.
Yeah, but he also has won back-to-back races here in 2004 as well as in June of 2005. So it's a good racetrack. A good racetrack, I guess you might say, all the way around for Roush Fenway when you think about it, because they, you know, Jack Roush has got 4 wins here at MIS.
And Matt Kenseth in the 17 car has 2 of those wins. 10 top 10 finishes here for Matt Kenseth.
But you know what is phenomenal about this 17 car here in 2007? Yeah, he's 242 points behind Jeff Gordon. He's second to points. He won at Fontana, but he's the only driver to complete all 4,559 laps of competition this year in 2007.
Larry, then maybe I'm kind of like putting a long spin on something, but I remember back in 1985, we were chasing a guy driving the 9 car at that time, Bill Elliott, who's driving the 21 car this weekend, and Matt Kenseth, to me, is a little bit like Darrell was at that time. We didn't win a lot of races that year, but we wound up winning the championship because we were very consistent. We won some key races, but we were stayed right behind that 9 car all year long, and when he slipped at the end of the season, we took advantage of him. And the way this chase format is laid out, as strong as this team has been performing, finishing races over the final 10 could pay off in dividends for this 17.
But I'm sure they would like to have more bonus points going into those final 10 races. Right now, they only have 10 bonus points for the win at Fontana. Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson, they each have 40 bonus points as of today.
I know, but you got to realize when that format comes together after the Richmond race, what's going to happen? They tighten everybody back up. They'll give him the bonus points, but he's only going to be 30 points behind.
That's of the day. We still have a lot of racing to go.
Exactly right, but that's not too far. It's a whole lot better than 200 something at this point in time.
Carl Edwards, another one of the Roush Fenway drivers in the 99 car. Leads the NASCAR Busch Series point standings.
And he was trying hard last week at Pocono. He was the last car to come to pit road about lap 96, 4 laps before the halfway, and he was screaming, "It's raining, it's raining, it's raining." He hit pit road. About 7 laps later, it did rain.
Hard.
Real hard.
Real hard.
Carl Edwards finished second here a year ago to Casey Kane. We'll have more Nextel Cup practice from Michigan right after this. Back at the Michigan International Speedway, you see Ryan Newman in the 12 car trying to win his 4th consecutive pole position in his 2007 season. He does have a pole here at Michigan.
It's been so interesting watching the evolution of this 12 car. You know, 2 or 3 years ago, they were fast on qualifying day. They were fast on race day. Then they got to the point where they were just kind of fast on qualifying day. And then they got to the point where they were not fast on neither day. But what I'm watching already with this 12 car, Jeff, you look at the last few weeks, 5 top 10s in the last 6 races, working on 4 consecutive Bud poles. They're back to where they were a few years ago, fast Friday and Sunday.
Yeah, and it's really impressive right there to see him to be able to accomplish that, because Ryan is a very good race car driver, and you know, we've always known he is fearless when it comes to qualifying, but it's great to see him up there competing in the position where he is as far as week in and week out, giving him an opportunity to win. And here's another young man in this 11 car. Take a look at Denny Hamlin driving for Joe Gibbs, who would like to probably help maybe, Steve, turn the fortunes of Chevrolet around. Chevrolet's not been that dominant here in Michigan. This has been more of a Dodge or a Ford track in recent years, and I think he's one of the guys, if anybody can, that can probably challenge for that.
Interesting stat, Jeff, about Chevrolet. Jeff Gordon is the only Chevy driver to win in the last 22 Michigan races.
When I look at Denny Hamlin, I think this by far is the best race team in 2007 that just can't close the deal. Last week, they went with 4 tires on that last pit stop and just could not make the ground back up. I mean, the guy has led 660 laps this year, but he just cannot get the victory lane, it seems like.
Got a little tire rubbage right there, McReynolds, on the left front.
But you've got to believe the 83 car, Brian Vickers, one of the teams, go or go home. We have 49 cars here that they are probably working on qualifying runs. When I look at the nose of the car, it looks like it's taped up pretty solid. Maximum front downforce when he goes off in the corner. A lot of travel with that downforce, and that's probably where that little bit of left front tire rub up in the left front fenders
he's
coming.
12th quickest right now, Larry, in this early practice session, and he is also like
Dragon.
4th quickest.
Sure, it's really hard the whole first lap.
Telling that crew exactly what we're seeing from up here in the booth, that he's got some front skirt dragging as well as the left front fender rubbing. But this is the race within the race we always talk about during these practice sessions. Who's working on what, race setup or qualifying setup? And here's another group that's got to be working on qualifying setup right now. David Ruderman in the 00 car. And he has actually got the fastest time posted at this point in time. He's 5th quickest. Just moved up the board. They must have been made a qualifying right then.
And he seems to be the Michael Waltrip Racing car that's able to reach down in that bag on qualifying day and make the show. Last week, Michael Waltrip, Dale Jarrett, they both missed the show. David Ruderman, he makes the show last week at Pocono.
Clint Boyer has turned in the fastest lap, followed by Jimmy Johnson, Joe Nemechek, J.J. Yaley, and that driver, 00 David Ruderman. Meanwhile, Juan Pablo Montoya in the 42 car out of Ganassi Racing with Felix Sabates.
I know what he's doing right now. He's breathing a sigh of relief. Finally, a racetrack that I know something about and I've seen. It's not concrete, Monster Mile or Pocono.
Or shaped like a triangle.
Exactly. A roval. Give me something I can sink my teeth into, guys.
Yeah, he has a couple of Michigan starts in kart here. In fact, he won here in July of 2000.
You know, one of the things, Jeff, you bring up a good point. One of the things the drivers love about this racetrack is it's extremely wide. There's plenty of room to race.
Yeah, it is. It's probably one of the, especially back in its heyday. I mean, when this racetrack was just been freshly paved, repaved, and everything was just right. These guys, I mean, they can just fan out. Steve, you run off in the corner, and you just kind of like, wherever the guy in front of you goes, you go the opposite way. You don't have to play follow the leader here. If he runs the bottom, you can go in the middle. If you want to go to the top, you can swing all the way up there and run high. But it's a fun racetrack for these guys because it's got a handle. The car's got a handle, but because of aero, I mean, you can draft. There's just so much this racetrack comes into play. I mean, it's great for the fans as well as for the competitors.
You know, Steve, normally on qualifying day, the fast way around is right around the bottom. That's where you would normally see cars running. And, of course, when they get ready to race is when they start moving around. But I think as hot and slick as this place is, later on today, in qualifying on speed, I think we'll see some cars that will not be right around the bottom. They're going to move that car maybe up a groove if it sticks a little better there.
And if they can keep it wound up. And I think that's the other thing right there is it's a momentum racetrack, and you got to keep it rolling.
Boys, let's talk a little history here at the Michigan International Speedway. Bill Elliott in that 21 car, 7 wins and 6 poles. He's driving for the Wood Brothers. The Wood Brothers lead all car owners at this racetrack with 11 wins. David Pearson, 8 times a winner here, and he had 9 poles as well.
Well, when you look at Bill Elliott and you look at the Wood Brothers 21 car at Michigan International Speedway alone, a total of 15 poles, and this is phenomenal. We've raced here 75 times, 18 wins between the two of them.
And he's 17th right now. Lindsay, what's going on down in the garage area?
Kyle Busch and his crew, they're really, really happy with how their car is right now. This is the same car that they had in California that Kyle finished 9th with. And I talked to Alan Gustafson, his crew chief, who said that they're so confident they've already actually swapped it over to qualifying trim. That's obviously what they're working on now. As for Kyle, I did get to speak with him really briefly, and I said, how are you feeling? He's like, I don't want to talk. And I said, well, if you'd sum up your emotions over the past couple of days, what would you say? And he said stressful. He said stressful, and then he really didn't want to talk about it anymore. So obviously, this is really wearing on him, guys.
But, you know, he had some interesting comments in a press release that was put out a couple of days ago. He said, you know what? I almost feel like I'm graduating. I've spent 3 years at Hendrick Motorsports, and it's time to move on.
A lot of questions for the Dale Earnhardt Jr. situation heading to Hendrick Motorsports. Practice continues here at Michigan. You're not ready for the drop of the green flag until you've seen NASCAR Race Day built by the Home Depot. Tune in as the Race Day crew gets you strapped in and fired up for NASCAR's biggest events. Don't miss NASCAR Race Day built by the Home Depot live Sunday, 11 a.m. only on Speed. There's Kurt Busch in the number 2 car, Ward Burton in the 4. Jimmy Johnson's been pretty quick here early in practice. Matt Yoakum is with him.
He's run 1 lap, and Jimmy, with that initial 1 lap, what's the feel you've gotten back in the race?
I feel really good with our car. We're second on the board right now, and we're smiling. We're excited. And with 1 lap, I got a decent feel for the car. The back of the car had a little bit of movement in it, so we're gonna make a little shock change and try to tame things out back there. But all in all, real good start for Los Monte Carlo.
This has been one of those places that you've been good, you've had some good results, but it has been a struggle at times.
Yeah, for whatever reason, we qualify well. We're competitive in the race, but when the checkered flag falls, something happens. We've had flat tires here, which I'm not excited about because we've already met our quota in flats for the year, and had fuel mileage things, just weird things that have kept us from having the finishes that we've kind of deserved and where we've been running in the race. So hopefully we can change that this weekend.
Flat tire at Pocono cost him 2 spots in the points. We'll let him get ready to get back in the car. They're finishing up some shock changes on this 48 machine. Steve?
All right, thank you, Matt. Kurt Busch in the 2 car, just 34th fastest in practice.
You know, I talked to his crew chief, Troy Raker, after Pocono, and they had a decent run at Pocono with a backup car. They finished 16th. But what Troy said, and I think this is, we always talk about the different agendas, especially with about 12 races before the chase. He said, Larry, going into Pocono, we were 17th in points. By finishing 16th at Pocono, we moved up to 16th. But we're not happy because the problem is they lost 44 points to the 12th place car. Right now, when you're back there, it doesn't matter what position you're in. It's how many points out of 12th that you are.
Only the top 12 advance. Let's go back into the garage and Lindsay.
I'm with Clint Boyer, who comes off of his 7th top 10 of the season from last week's finish in Pocono. Clint, right now you're fastest. So what do you know about this that other people don't?
Well, I was just trying to figure it out. It was a little bit tight. Just came in and making some adjustments. I definitely think, we need to go faster. But so far, with everybody's first run, we're looking to be all right. The DirecTV car sure looks good, so we just got to keep it up front. We like it here.
We're not going to sugarcoat this. You have finishes of 33rd and 39th here in Michigan. What do you do now to make sure that you're able to stay up front?
Well, we got to make sure we keep oil in the car. Last year we ran out of oil and blew up with 3 to go run a third. So just got to keep those out of there. This is a big track, a long race, and fatigue is a big part of this race. And we just got to be there at the end of it. We know how to go faster around here. We just got to be there at the end.
Clint Boyer hoping that Michigan could be his first win of the season.
Thank you, Lindsay. Clint comes in here 8th in points. Meanwhile, Dale Earnhardt Jr., there he is, 14th in points. And as I said, going to break, perhaps more questions than answers for 2008, but we do know that he will drive for Hendrick Motorsports. Don't know if Budweiser's coming. Don't know what number he's going to run. Don't know who his crew chief is going to be.
I know one thing, they got some work to do, though, because right now they are 47th in the practice charts. 48 of the 49 cars that are here have been out. But this has been a good racetrack for Dale. Jeff, he has 15 starts here. He has 2 Bud poles. In fact, it's the only racetrack where he has multiple Bud poles.
Well, just watching the car go through the turn right there, especially through 1 and 2, the car looked to me like, look at Larry, it's just up on top of the racetrack and it's just walking around. Again, they may be working on the race setup, but even, well, he's got a lot of tape on the front nose now looking at. Maybe that's what part of it is, to see what he does as far as completing this run, if he jumps up any. But, yeah, he does move up a little bit. Moves up to 26, but he was getting a little bit of a tow from the 26 car, as a matter of fact, of Jamie McMurray. But the car really looks like it's on top of the racetrack, and he couldn't hold it down on the bottom. You talked about it. Don't be surprised to see guys up off that white line, but I don't think he's going to be happy with this run overall, so they'll have to go back and do some work. But the key thing, we keep talking about, the good part, the bad part.
A little slick overall, rear end to front. Cars on top of the racetrack. Shock or air pressure.
Very good call, Mr. Hammond.
I got something right this week.
You rehearsed it.
I got something right this week.
Every once in a while, a blind squirrel finds an acorn, right, Jeff?
Yeah, pass the peanut butter.
Clint Boyer's the quickest here at Michigan. That's Kevin LePage in the 37 car. That's a Dodge. He is the slowest. Or actually, he just moved up in that run. Had been the slowest. He's up to 37th right now in the 37 car.
One of the go-or-go homers, and this is his very first run out on the racetrack.
Guys, we kind of got our monitor set up here so we know as far as the go-go homers are, the way they're highlighted. But the crews down there have the same thing. And if you go down and watch, like say, for example, Kevin LePage's crew, that's what they're looking for. Not where they are as far as the ranking, as far as speed's concerned, but where are they in that line as far as that pecking order is concerned. Just like David Rudiman, he's at the head of the class. And I think right now, is it Scott Riggs, Larry? He's going to be the guy that would just barely make it in. Or Michael Waltrip, which one I counted down? 7.
Michael Waltrip would be in. Riggs would not be in.
Okay, so there again, and Scott Riggs is 29th fastest, while Michael's 23rd fastest on the overall chart. But the key thing for these guys, once again, is you want to beat the guy that is, you're trying to get in the race in front of. That's the key thing.
Actually, Riggs would be in because Bill Elliott, we have to watch where he's at in the 21 car because he's guaranteed a spot in the championship provisional, and right now he would be in on time.
Yeah, there you go, and you see Bill Elliott, he's highlighted in gold because he is a former champion and he has a champion's provisional he can use instead of having to qualify on time.
And one thing we haven't talked about yet is the news. Michael Waltrip made the announcement that he will get out of his 55 car for Sonoma next week, and then again at Watkins Glen, the road courses those two races and let Terry Labonte, a past champion, drive.
So we absolutely know that the 55 car will race next week, and you might say, now what about Bill Elliott? Well, the past championship provisional goes to the most recent champion. Obviously, Terry Labonte has been champion in 1996. Bill Elliott was 1988, but I couldn't think of a better choice. Terry Labonte almost won that race out there last year, driving, I think, for a Hall of Fame race.
96 car. And also you got to remember that recently Terry has been doing some practice work as far as at VMI as well as in Canada with the Busch car. So his road racing skills have been kind of like tuned up recently.
Yeah,
so he should be really strong in that 55 car next weekend at Sonoma.
Yeah, you mentioned VIR. The Virginia International Raceway is a road course. There's Tony Stewart in the 20 car. He has a win here at Michigan.
He has Michigan, but I was also going to say, Steve, he's another one of those guys that's been at VIR here recently, testing road course cars. Tony Stewart getting tuned up for the upcoming races. Sonoma, like he needs to get tuned up. He is really one of the premier road racers, at least in my opinion, when it comes to getting around the track. He can get the job done. He, as well as Jeff Gordon, they're tremendous road racers.
You know, this is the time of year that normally this car comes to life. We saw it last year. We saw it the year before. And I've read this last night, and I thought this was pretty interesting. He has 29 career wins, but only 4 of those wins have come before the month of June. This is normally when this group starts to step it up and start to shine. Even though he's 6th in the points, I know this is a group they want to get to victory lane.
Big time, big time.
Jeff Gordon has 2 wins here, 15 top 5 finishes. Matt has more on Jeff Gordon and Steve Letarte.
And the 24 team has stepped it up in a different way this year. They changed up their agenda on Fridays, now primarily working on their qualifying setup, and it's paid off. They've won 5 poles this season, the last being at Richmond. Right now, the car's 35th in practice. A lot of minor changes on this 24 car after running 3 laps. In fact, Jeff said the car was just so loose, especially when he was coming off turn 4 doing his mock qualifying run like he was coming to the green. So Steve Letarte and the guys went into action. A number of small changes, but a big change they made was with the front sway bar.
And I think that's going to be a key. We've been talking about how hot and slick this place is. Even though it's 2 laps of qualifying, trust me, it will have to happen on lap 1. And you just heard Matt talk about coming to the green through 3 and 4. Pretty important.
Very important when it comes to this place. But right now, here's the guy that's getting it done. His teammate, the 48 car, Jimmy Johnson.
Over 185 miles per hour here on this 2-mile Michigan International Speedway. Tune in tomorrow as the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series takes on Michigan. It's a guaranteed fender-to-fender points battle as the short beds bump and bang toward the checkered flag. The NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series live tomorrow, 2:30 Eastern, only on Speed. Number 9 car, the defending champion of this event, Casey Kane, behind the wheel of that Dodge.
And Steve, you'll look really close to that number 9 car, particularly the nose area. That's the old style nose that he had on that car a year ago when he won this race. They've gone back to that because in talking to Ray Evernham, the owner, guys, we're kind of like lost like an Easter egg in the high weeds, and we've got to figure something out.
And practice-wise, they still are in trouble, Jeff, because right now they're 47th quickest. And we need to make sure the fans understand that the reason they didn't go back to the oh no sooner, it's pretty much a Dodge call. Dodge is promoting what that new nose looked like. But as far as legal, NASCAR allows these teams to use anything body style-wise for 3 years. In other words, right now, anything that was legal body-wise in 2005, 2006, 2007, you can race with on the racetrack.
And Ray Evernham explained to me, it's almost like we're going to use it like a test session. We're going to ABA this situation. We're going to run the old nose this week because we had so much success here a year ago. We understand our notes. If we can't get a hold of the racetrack with this kind of combination and our understanding of the car, then we know that we're fighting something besides that aero component. And that's what they're trying to do, is just lay that to rest so that the driver and the rest of the team and everybody else involved will know, take that off the table and forget about it.
Kevin Harvick is outside of his race car. Lindsay has an update on that 29.
Kevin Harvick is 24th fastest right now in this practice, and I just talked to him. He said that they've done what they wanted to do for this first stint running in race trim. He said the car was a little bit tight in the center, but they went ahead and changed the front springs. They're hoping that that makes a difference, and actually now they're swapping over to qualifying trim. Kevin says he likes this track, but it's going to change so much between now and race time that they want to just get a good basis. Kevin was second here in 2003.
12 starts for Kevin Harvick, 2 top 5 finishes, as Lindsey said, finished third here.
You know, as we watch Jamie McMurray in this 26 car go out there and start one of his practice runs, I want to expand a little bit more on this 9-car situation. I talked to Ray Evernham a 3 weeks ago, and I think what he told me is supporting basically what we're seeing here. He said, Larry, the nose is not everything that we're fighting. He said, I really feel like this new generation of Goodyear tire that's out there is what we cannot get our arms around. And you know what? I had a conversation in the garage here this morning with a team that supports this. They told me it was one of the go-or-go-homers, and I won't expand on who it was because they gave me information that I don't want to share. But they said, Larry, we were a race car that was absolutely going to miss the Pocono race. We were the slowest car there. We added 2 pounds of air to our left side tires. They qualified the top 20. I think the tire situation right now is so sensitive. That's where a lot of teams are struggling. And we talk about coil binding and all. I think the tires are a big part of the equation.
And sometimes it can be simply as Casey Kane's a great race car driver. Kenny Francis, he's as good as there is down in that garage area. But this little things can throw you such a big curve and get you confused. Because if you take a look at the 9 car right now, 49th quickest in this practice session. While his teammate, Elliott Sadler, elected to come up here with the conventional nose, he is presently 18th.
When you say conventional,
I take it back, he's 13th.
The current nose.
The current nose, the one that everybody else is running, including, you know, the Dodges of, for example, the Penske cars at Ryan Newman that have been sitting on the pole here recently. But, again, you don't understand, and Larry's been there. When you get confused, you get off a little bit. Sometimes it's the simplest little adjustment that puts you back on track. And until you get there, I'm telling you, you will pull your hair out, beat your head against the wall. I mean, you'll lose sleep at night. It'll just drive you crazy.
I think the key word there, Steve, a little bit. We're talking thousands, hundredths of a second.
Jimmy Johnson still the quickest here at Michigan. David Stremme headed to the garage. He is 5th fastest in that number 40 car, and a car owned by Chip Ganassi. Larry, Jeff, I want to follow up. Speaking of Chip Ganassi, he said at its very core, the fundamental of racing is to get the horsepower to the ground and those 4 tires with as much contact as possible on the racetrack. So, Larry, what about the tires? You talk about it's thrown some of the teams for a loop. Why is that?
It's a new construction. It's a different sidewall. Yeah, there's a little difference in compound, which is how grippy the tire is, but I think the construction. And now these teams are able to get information from Goodyear about the spring rate, the loads, everything about these tires, and these guys go back, and it's almost like, Jeff, you almost wonder, do they have too much information about the tires? Is the reason I think sometimes they get in trouble with them.
And it could very easily be that, Larry, because if you don't have the right person, the right group of engineers to be able to explain it to you, and then I think you pointed out a minute ago, changing air pressure at the right place at the right time. And folks, you got to understand, we're not just talking about we've got an interliner here at a place like Michigan, so you have to sometimes adjust the interliner to match the outer pressures to get the car or get the tire to respond the way you want to. So you having a great tire engineer or a group of engineers that can take that information and assimilate it and make it make sense to the crew chief and to the driver is so important. And the key thing is, if your driver is not happy with what he's feeling, and you hear some drivers come in saying this, it's squirming around, it's wallowing, it's not standing up, it's falling over. All of these verbiages that come back to you because they don't like the way the car is making contact with the racetrack and the feel he gets back in through the steering wheel. That's where it begins and ends with that driver.
The moral of the story, Lindsey Zarniak, Jeff and I picked a great decade to become broadcaster.
Amen.
Oh, but you guys have done such a terrific job. I think Carl Edwards would like to be a broadcaster one day, wouldn't you?
I don't know. I'm enjoying the racing a lot, but we got a pretty good Office Depot Fusion here. We're having some fun. In race trim, it's pretty good. We're going to switch over to qualifying trim here, and we'll see how it goes.
Roush is so dominant at this racetrack. Why is that? And is that something that you're seeing today? I know it's early yet.
Yeah, it's pretty early. A lot of good cars haven't been in race trim, but you know, this is just it's a 2-mile racetrack, so the engine is a huge portion of the lap. You know, you spend a lot of time on the throttle, and then you also need the body to be real nice, and you got to have, you know, real good tire data and all that. It takes all aspects of a team to run well here, and Roush has got a lot of depth. I think that's why they run well.
All right, Carl Edwards finished second here last year.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lindsey. This has been a great racetrack for Fords and Larry Roush in general.
9 wins at this place with several different drivers, not with just one driver.
And Robbie Gordon aboard a Ford. Ford has 29 wins at Michigan, the most of any manufacturer.
Robbie just now finished making a run there. He was 30th. He's now moved up about 3 positions to the 27th position. And Larry, you know, he's going through one of those transition periods. Got a different crew chief just recently, switched over to Fords this year. But when it comes to racing and being a hardcore racer, I don't think of anybody out there on the racetrack can really say Robbie Gordon's not a guy that gives you 110% every time he's behind the wheel.
I don't think you ever will question that, whether it's practice, qualifying, or the race.
Michael Waltrip trying to qualify for his 3rd race of this 2007 season.
There's a statistic it's hard for me to kind of wrap my brain around. 23 years in Nextel Cup racing. That is a long time, friends. A lot of people don't realize this, but Michael, at one time, he won what they used to call the Baby Grand Division. In his first year, I think as a rookie and everything like that, he used to race those little small cars. Can you imagine?
4-cylinder.
Can you imagine sticking him down in a little small 4-cylinder car and racing him around places like Daytona? But he did a tremendous job, won the championship that year. But, you know, most notably, his big remembrances have got to be the victories at Daytona.
I've had my people working on some stats. Now, last week at Pocono, Michael Waltrip missed the race there by 8 1/1000ths of a second. 8 thousandths of a second. If you take 12 of the first 14 races, the 2 races I'm going to pull out is Daytona because it's a different format, and Texas, of course, because it was rained out, qualifying was rained out. The difference between total difference between the car that got in, the last car to get in on time, and the car that missed the show, the total time, 0.324 seconds total in 12 races.
Amazing.
And remember, a lot of big racetracks in that number.
A lot of big
racetracks. A whole lot more air pressure right front.
We're going to hook you up with some more split.
And I think what he was talking
more in the right front.
He's talking some tires there, but he was talking about more split. I think he's talking about possibly even air pressure split, maybe spring split.
Well, crew chief saying one thing, driver's saying another. I got to get that right front tire to stand up for me if you want me to drive off in there. Don't be loose getting in the corner.
It's not good when they're different.
Dave Blaney aboard the Caterpillar Toyota for Bill Davis Racing. Currently 16th fastest in that 22 car.
And the Caterpillar 22 car luck continued at Pocono. You know, he had a decent race car and just wrong place, wrong time. Greg Biffle, we talked about him earlier. The 16 car had his hands full the entire 3 days at Pocono. Car just walked up on him, gets into the left rear of Dave Blaney, backs it into the fence.
Kyle Busch in the 5 car. Comes to Michigan. 10th in points.
Larry, I don't know about you, but I guarantee you he's got to at least be feeling a little bit better about the fact that he's back in his office, in his world, and getting away from all the media hype and everything that's going on. This is the one place he's got an opportunity to show what he can do, drive race cars, work with his crew chief, and basically shut the rest of the world off.
Well, and Jeff, Larry had a great point. You know, I'm sure Kyle is disappointed to some degree that he's leaving Hendrick Motorsports, but he, as Lindsey said, he is the hottest free agent right now.
There's no question, absolutely no question.
That's John Andretti in the 45 car. Chad McCumbee drove that to a 25th place finish a week ago. Pocono did a nice job in his debut.
And I was talking to Dale Inman right before this practice show about Chad McCumbee, and he said, you know, we were happy. He was just solid. He kept the car out of trouble, but he said what was amazing was the feedback that he gave us about that race car. He said it was awesome, practice, qualifying, and the race.
John was recently at Indianapolis, run the Indianapolis 500, and good to see him back here at MIS, the racetrack where I think he got his first start with the Petties.
John Andretti, his best start here in 19 Michigan races as a second with a best finish of 4th back in 1995.
Now back to Kyle Busch, he was 49th fastest on the charts, but remember we talked about him just a little while ago, and they were in race trim. They just flipped over to qualifying mode, and he jumped up to 7th quickest. The real challenge here in qualifying, and Jeff, I know he'll relate to this, we talked about it, getting through 3 and 4, coming to take the green, building that speed down this front straightaway. Then what becomes the challenge, you enter the corners here so fast, is the car tends to want to get loose with all that tape on the nose. But then getting the car to rotate through the middle of the corner is the next challenge. This track, qualifying-wise, is quite a challenge across the board.
It really is, again, because of the speed you carry off in the turn, the big sweeping corners that are there. You have so much you can mess up on, but once you mess up getting in the turn, it kills your exit speeds. Larry, you talk about it coming to the green, how important it is. You need a veteran like Jeff Burton here in the 31 car, because he understands how important it is. It's better to back off a little early and get back in that throttle and be able to hammer it off the current turns here. Otherwise, you get yourself in a lot of trouble. A lot of young drivers that think they can drive it in so deep here, and next thing you know, the car gets loose, pushes up on them, whatever, and they lose that exit speed, which is so critical.
Mark Martin's a 4-time winner here at Michigan, and he's with Matt.
And running very strong, 2 of the 3 gang cars in the top 10, and one of those is Mark Martin. Larry Mack was talking about how challenging it is here at Michigan qualifying. For you, what's the biggest challenge with qualifying at MIS?
Well, the conditions, the sun, the clouds, the draw. This is a very sensitive track, and a little bit of difference in the sun can make a couple of tenths, 3 tenths, and that's a lot in the qualifying order. So I think that's the biggest thing.
How would you, when you look back to this practice session so far, we've got about 32 minutes left, how would you grade what your team has done so far?
I'd say, hey, I love these guys. I love working with them. We're not where we need to be yet, but we're, it's at our fingertips, so, hopefully we'll get it here.
He's a 4-time winner here at Michigan International Speedway. Currently, he is 9th in practice.
Thank you, Matt. And he's also 12th in points despite running 11 of the 14 races in 2007. Race day fans, we're looking for photos. Show us your colors of speed for a chance to see yourself on race day. We'll select the best photo each week and show it on air. It's all part of My Race Day. Upload your photos to speedtv.com, keyword My Race Day now.
Now we see several cars waiting in line down there, and this is a little bit almost like, not quite like Daytona and Talladega, but in some regards, those guys are waiting to make a practice qualifying run. Jeff talked about this a while ago. The draft definitely plays a role here, but one thing, and I heard a driver say this earlier in the week, the draft can hurt you, it can help you here. It helps you on the straightaways because it reduces the drag of the car, but it can hurt you in the corners because it hurts the downforce on the car.
Guys, when you were talking, I had an opportunity to look over, and I saw the 12 car. Pay attention to what happened here, Larry.
Saw the smoke.
All of a sudden, he really gets that car out there.
Wow.
Down hard on the left front. I mean, hard on the left front. It's almost like, wait a minute.
But you know what, Jeff? Here's what I think may be going on, and maybe Matt or Lindsay can find out for sure, is the fact that I think he's been working on race trim, and all of a sudden Mike Nelson, that group, they put it in qualifying trim. We talked about it a while ago. You put the nose on the tape, the driver gets off in the corner a little harder with fresh tires, the car travels more in the tire rub.
All of a sudden, you were within a 16th of an inch rub it in your race trim. When you had the extra little bit of tape, all of a sudden it's all over that fender. And again, it looked like he was just about ready to lose control, but he's bringing it back to pit road. They'll do a little work to that 12 and cool him back down, putting 4 more good years on it, and away he'll go again.
See Kevin Harvick, Ryan Newman trying to win his 4th consecutive pole. Do you know the last driver to win 4 consecutive poles, boys?
Who was that?
Hammond?
No, I'm not sure. Probably Ryan Newman.
Ryan Newman had 4 in a row.
See, that was a trick question.
No, it wasn't.
Could be 2 tricks if I figured it out.
Why was it a trick question?
I guess because we got it wrong. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I mean, what's this we stuff? I think I got it right. The key thing right now, though, with the 29 car, guys, his car looks really clean. The last time I think Lindsey Zarniak was down in his garage area, they were changing over to a qualifying mode. So let's see how fast he goes. But, Lindsey, right now, what is going on with the 12 car?
Right now, they're trying to address their qualifying trim. But to answer your question, Larry, from before, they were in race trim. They feel really, really confident about this car, and Newman hasn't really had any complaints. So right now, they're taking a look, seeing what they can fix, and they're going to get it back out as soon as they can.
Jeff Hammond, you and I are all over today, aren't we? I just didn't know about Ryan Newman 4 consecutive poles. That was a trick question.
I understand that, but yeah, he set me up. He wanted me to get one right today again. 2 right. That'd be 2 I got right.
J.J. Yaley, 7th fastest in his Chevrolet out of Joe Gibbs Racing.
This is that same car that he had that great run at Lowe's Motor Speedway, finished 2nd a few weeks ago in the Coca-Cola 600.
I'll tell you what, Doggy, looking pretty good coming back here to the stripe. Let's see what the 18 car can put up on the board. Can he move up a little bit?
7th quickest right now at a 38.91. Right now, Jimmy Johnson at a 38.79.
Matt has more on JJ's teammate, Denny Hamlin.
And Denny Hamlin just did one mock qualifying run. They swapped over to the qualifying setup. He says it feels pretty solid, but he told his crew chief Mike Ford, the more you snug me up, the more comfortable I'll be, and that will equate to better time on the stopwatch. Possibly going to make another shock change on this stop here in the garage area. But one thing they talked about, and Larry Mack, you already addressed it, they got a late draw in qualifying. They will go out 34th, so that's another big positive for a place that Denny has never finished worse than 12 in his 2 races here. By the way, you're talking about the trivia question. You know if it's qualifying, Larry Mack and Jeff, it's going to be Ryan Newman. But if it's any kind of racing question, you know it's got to be either Harry Gant or Mark Martin.
In the Busch Series.
Exactly. Busch Series.
Yeah, but when it comes to a place like Michigan, the 2 names that come to mind, my thought process have got to be Cale Yarborough and David Pearson, because they both have had some really phenomenal runs here. Cale, I believe, still holds the record as far as most laps led at a single racetrack, or at least here at Michigan.
Won the very first race here in 1969 on this very day, June 15th.
Very good, Mr. Steve.
How about that? It's Johnny Sauter in the 70 car. Sauter right now clocking in 34.
Get back, Steve. Get back.
It's radioactive.
It's radioactive. It'll make your hair fall out.
And what is that supposed to mean? You looked dead at me.
I looked at Steve first, and he looked at you. I had to follow him.
Don't drag me under that bus.
So maybe that's what the problem. I've been roaming around that car too much. I don't know.
Tony Stewart in the 20 car.
Completed his qualifying run there. Pushing a little bit of water out because he's got it taped up solid.
33rd quickest right now for the 20.
Don't forget, Bud Pole qualifying later today here on Speed. Ward Burton will be the first driver to qualify. Ryan Newman going for 4 poles in a row. Here's race car driver Kenny Wallace, 48 fastest. The only driver slower than Kenny right now is Casey Kane.
Yeah, Kenny had qualified for about 6 consecutive races, and he moves up a little bit, but he's still the slowest of the go-homers. They missed the race last week at Pocono, but before that, 6 consecutive starts for the 78 car.
And he's also got a little bit of tire rub. But this team right here, believe it or not, guys, they're working real hard trying to get things worked out where they can get a second team going.
Lindsey standing by with Ryan Newman, who qualifies 37th today, Lindsey.
Ryan Newman standing by as his team changes a spring. And Ryan, we saw that you had a little bit of a tire rub there. How is the car now?
I think the car will be fine. Just got to make sure the Goodyears don't rub the body, and we'll be fine. But just need to get a good qualifying run in so I have confidence for the actual qualifying lap itself. And
you've had so much success here at Michigan. What is the key to qualifying?
Having a good race car, a lot of horsepower, and just being smooth. It's a momentum racetrack because of how big it is.
Ryan Newman comes off of his 2nd runner-up finish in a row, this time looking for a win. To Matt.
An important debrief between Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus. Jimmy using his hands to express just how this race car is going into the corners. He says into turn 3, it's very solid and good. When it lands, it just gets on that right rear, and he's had to chase it a little bit. Chad Knaus says it could be due to the track temperature. It's climbed from 116 to 120. Meanwhile, right alongside, his teammate Jeff Gordon says his car feels good. It's pretty tight. Great on entry, but a little tight everywhere else.
Matt Kurt Busch has just jumped to the top of the speed charts. Bumped Jimmy Johnson and Joe Nemechek. Kurt Busch ran a 38.74, 185.850 miles per hour. A 49 car, driven by Mike Bliss, 45th currently.
Yeah, they've got some work to do on this car as well. They missed the show last week at Pocono, and he's not the slowest of the Go-Go homers. We talked about Kenny Wallace, but Jeremy Mayfield, Mike Bliss, Kenny Wallace right there near the bottom of the charts.
David Stremme in the 40 car.
You know, if you don't believe that some guys is going from the practice and qualifying setups to how it can affect you, David Stremme at one time was in the top 5. Now he's already been bumped all the way back down to 18th because everybody now is stepping up. And Larry, you know how that must drive you crazy as a crew chief. You think you got a pretty good racer, you're sitting up there in the top 10, you're thinking, okay, we're all right. And all of a sudden you look, and you're 28th, and it's like, uh-oh, we got to do some more, we got to find some more, and that can drive a driver as well as a crew chief and a crew kind of crazy about what do you do next to try to find that little extra speed.
Just real quick story about David Stremme. Ganassi Sabatis Racing, they did kind of like the Father's Day theme for this weekend. Of course, it is Father's Day weekend, and a lot of the drivers were talking about their dad. Now, David's dad, Lou, he will not be here Sunday because he'll be racing, and David said, they asked David, okay, what are you going to get your dad for Father's Day? He said, well, probably the biggest thing he could use is a set of tires for his race on Sunday.
You know, his mom races too.
Exactly.
David Stremme's mom races. David Stremme jumped up into the 10th position from 18th.
You know, Jeff, one thing I noticed as we watch A.J. Allmendinger in the 84 car, right now he's 14th quickest in this practice, about 3rd quickest of the Go-Go homers. You see how these cars really move around. But unlike Pocono, it's not necessarily because of the bumps. This Chad Canals and I talked earlier in the week, this place is actually pretty smooth. The reason you see them jumping around is because it is smooth. They're so aggressive with the shock package, pulling the car down, it just makes the car just hop across the racetrack.
Riding on the tires is all they're doing. The suspension itself has basically been made almost inactive with so much pull down and the way you coil bind, you get the car down. It's very, very, very rigid.
Martin Truex Jr. in the 1 car got his first career win at Dover a couple weeks ago. Had a good run at Pocono, and right now, Lindsay, he's 9th fastest.
He is, and he actually had been as fastest as 6th up there for a little bit. Martin feels really good about his car. They brought it in, they changed his spring. They're hoping he can pick up some speed. And I was talking to one of the crew guys who said, man, we feel really good about this. And I said, what does this racetrack mean to Martin? They said, it means a heck of a lot of a difference to sit on a pole in Detroit. Why'd they say that, guys? You know that.
Because the manufacturers are just about an hour to the northeast of here. I know of the races that I won, a couple of them that are special, is sitting down in Victory Lane, getting your picture made with Edsel Ford.
Right up the road, Ford Manufacturing is in Dearborn, Michigan. Denny Hamlin in the 11 car has jumped up atop the speed charts. We'll be back to Michigan. Brian Vickers has just bumped Denny Hamlin from the top of the speed charts. 186.181 miles per hour for Vickers in his Toyota.
And right now we have 4 Toyotas in the 17, and we were talking about Detroit. You had an interesting observation about that, Mr. Jeff.
Well, you got to realize, guys, this is not the home of Toyota. So you think about the fact, if I come into a man's backyard, I want to steal his thunder, what better way to do it if Toyota can come out here and kind of like upstage the Dodge, the Fords, and the Chevrolets in their backyard.
I know one thing. I checked into the motel last night. Across the street, it said the home site of Edsel Ford.
Exactly right.
Dearborn, Michigan.
You got it, buddy.
Bobby Labonte in the 43 car for Petty Enterprises, also in a Dodge. He'll be on trackside tonight at 7 Eastern.
And I know this team, they're not making a lot of noise, but one thing I did notice after finishing 19th at Pocono, they've had 6 consecutive top 20 finishes. And I keep saying it. I know when you look at the stats, it's about wins, top 5s, and top 10s. But when I look at the competition, if you can have 6 consecutive top 20 finishes, you're actually not too bad off.
He's 17th in points.
That's what's important right there.
That's right.
Is that, they put themselves in position. If they keep running off those finishes, get the team a little bit stronger, you can't rule them out as far as climbing up the ladder, maybe jumping into the chase for the championship. This guy right here, he's just wanting to kind of keep his deal going because he's so impressive. And one of the things I was going to bring up early on, they were showing the crew chief early.
Grip, still too tight.
Give him a little call back to Steve Letarte about what the car feels like.
He's 21st quickest in this practice session. That run there was a little slower.
We freed it up. Early entry, late exit. Still real tight to the middle.
So what he's describing there, we talked about being a little free getting in. He's a little free, it sounds like, on the late exit of the corner. But the biggest thing that will definitely hurt you coming to the green through 3 and 4 is if the car is too tight and sliding the front wheels.
That's right. And that's where Steve Letarte will have to go work his magic. But I was going to go back and say the one thing I noticed about that 24 car, they had a big print in the USA Today about the winning thing for Chevrolet and everything like that. It showed Steve Letarte there and talking about what a great job they did and a great call he made. But they didn't put Steve's name in the paper. They didn't give him no credit. And as a crew chief, that ain't right, boys. You got to give the credit to the crew chief when he does a good job. That was a great call by Steve Letarte.
Lindsay, we've been saying all along, it's all about the crew chiefs.
It is, and that would be Troy Rager for Kurt Busch. And right now, he is a very happy man because Kurt had gotten all the way up to fastest. Right now, they're making some camber changes. They're giving him a set of stickers. I talked to one of his crew members who said that they just went over the notes from last year, and right now they seem to have struck on something good. They just took a run out in qualifying trim, so they're making those changes, and they're going to see if it's as good as they really think. Matt.
Denny Hamlin had probably the best race car at Pocono, but Mother Nature had other plans coming to Michigan, a place you've never finished worse than P2 so far on board. So you and your team, long debrief, must be pretty happy.
Yeah, we're real happy with it. We were dead last for most of the practice today, so that was all race trim stuff, and in qualifying we picked it way up. So I'm pretty happy with this whole FedEx Freight team. They've done a great job for me all year, and the reason we're running as well as we are this year is the strength of this race team and Mike Ford and all those guys. And even though we may not have the wins show for it, as competitive as we are, we're going to be contenders.
How much more are you guys going to tweak on this race car before you go out to qualify in about 2.5 hours?
Well, that was pretty good right there as far as the balance is concerned. So right now we just need to correct, we got a little bit more tape we can go. We got, allow for the conditions that we're going to have. We got a pretty decent draw. So, just really tuned to the track conditions as they change now.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
Matt, it's Toyota, Chevrolet, and Ford atop the speed charge. Brian Vickers, Denny Hamlin, and Matt Kenseth leading the way here in practice. Tonight, the ARCA REMAX Series takes the fight to Michigan. Can veteran Frank Kimmel continue to stand against Michael McDowell, or will the defender fall behind the rookies? Next late charges. ARCA REMAX Series racing tonight, 5 Eastern, only on Speed. Interesting front row for ARCA tonight. Sam Hornish, the open wheel ace, on the pole alongside Aaron Crocker driving for Ray Evernham.
That is a very interesting front row. Very much so.
Brian Vickers still atop the speed charts here, followed by Denny Hamlin, Matt Kenseth, Kurt Busch, J.J. Yaley.
Yeah, Tony made one qualifying run early on and did not fare very well, and right now he's currently 39th, Larry. It looks to me like he's going to make another one here, see if they made the right adjustments, because he probably will not get back out for another run. So it's probably his final.
Yeah, we only have about 8 to 9 minutes left in this practice session, Jeff. Right now, Steve, you talked about Brian Vickers being at the top of the charts. Obviously, he's the fastest of the go-or-go-homers. The next fastest, Bill Elliott, in that 21 car back in 15th quickest. A lot of them grouped right there together. Bill Elliott, Dave Blaney, A.J. Allmendinger, and Michael Waltrip, 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th.
Tony Stewart 6th in points heading into Sunday's race. Greg Biffle in the 16 car has a good record at this racetrack. Biffle 8 starts, 4 top 5s, 2 wins.
Right now only 39th quickest in his 16 car, and he's run about as many laps as anyone. I see a lot of guys run 4, 5, 6, 7 laps. Biffle has actually run 16 laps That's the same amount of laps that Denny Hamlin ran. That's the most of anyone. Tony Stewart has actually run 18 laps.
Kevin Harvick in the middle of a bunch of Chevrolets in positions 7 through 13. Harvick is 10th in the 29 car.
Speaking of the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race tomorrow on Speed, Kevin Harvick will be a participant in that race.
Guys, while we were talking, Kurt Busch has now regained the top spot right there. Just went out and made that qualifying effort at about 186 miles an hour. Position one more time, knocking off Brian Vickers. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can pull out here as this practice winds down. Everybody's making these final adjustments and final runs.
It's Jeff Burton in the 31, and I've got bad news for the rest of the Truck Series drivers. Mark Martin.
I knew that's where you were going to go.
Mark Martin's entered along with Kyle Busch. You mentioned Kevin Harvick, Bobby Labonte, and Mark.
You know, thank God he retired.
Yeah, it's not that busy.
Not really.
You know, you just talked about Kurt Busch as we watched Jeff Burton in the 31 car. Right now, he's 20th quickest. Kurt Busch fastest at a 38.65, a little over 186 miles per hour. Now, the track record here was set 2 years ago by Ryan Newman at a 37.06 to 194.2 miles per hour. I don't believe the weather or the lack of grip in the tire will allow us to get near that track record. I don't know that we're going to get within a second of that unless things. But this, Jeff, you know this. This just seems to be one of those racetracks when they go out to qualify and the guys in the garage do all their things, you're just automatically faster when you qualify than when you practice for some reason.
I know exactly what the reason is. It's some darn drivers.
They finally get up on the wheel.
They hold back. It's kind of like, we're not going to give you everything we got to have until we I'm not sticking my neck out until it counts. And again, as a crew chief, and Larry will tell you this, that's when you get frustrated because they come back and say, well, the car didn't feel the same. Well, you only ran a half a second or 3/4 second faster. It's not going to feel the same.
Crew chiefs are ganging up on me. You know what Buddy Baker said?
No, what did Buddy Baker say?
Buddy Baker said, you can't throw a brick in that seat and make it turn left.
And what is that supposed to mean?
I'm
you
not
get that
sure.
one? I'm not.
They don't drive themselves.
I'm not knocking that fact.
Do you know who the last driver to sit on 4 consecutive poles were?
Ryan Newman. The last driver to sit on 5 consecutive poles.
I'll get back with you on that one.
Bill Elliott.
Was that a trick question? A trick question.
Jeff Gordon slows his Chevrolet down the backstretch, headed into turn 3. Right now, 18th fastest. The quickest is Martin Truex Jr. in the 1 car. Kurt Busch, 2nd quickest. Let's check in with Matt.
And Gordon's 3 other teammates are currently 13th or better. Casey Mears, how would you grade this car in this practice session?
I think it was really good. It was kind of hard to tell. We went out and race trim early. The car got really, really tight, and the tires seemed to lose a ton of grip, so it was kind of hard to get a good idea of what it was supposed to be like in race trim without other guys out there doing race runs. But in qualifying trim, you know, the car's working really well. Real happy with everybody. This is the car we raced at Charlotte, so it's a good car. And, you know, we'll qualify the best we can, but I think we're going to have a good race car. We just got to tune on a little bit more small.
That car went to victory lane at Charlotte, scoring his first Nextel Cup Series victory. To Lindsey Zarniak.
Kyle Busch ends this practice session as he began, very focused, as well as his crew. Kyle just made a beeline to his hauler, but the crew is working to make any last-minute adjustments. They just did make a shock change, also a wedge adjustment. His crew chief, Alan Gustafson, says they're very, very pleased with where the car is right now. Does have a little bit of a ways to go, but Kyle left saying, I like it. I really like it. Guys?
Thank you, Lindsey. Practice coming to an end. Casey Kane in the 9 car was looking for speed. He's found some of it. He's up to 28th fastest in his Dodge for Evernham Motorsports.
But I think it's relative. Even though he's found some speed, remember, so many cars they've kicked into qualifying mode here to tail in this practice is we actually only have about a minute of practice left here in this session before qualifying. Still not sure this 9 car that sat on the pole and won the race a year ago is anywhere close to where they were at that point.
Looks like Martin Truex Jr. is going to win practice ahead of Kurt Busch, Brian Vickers, Denny Hamlin, and Clint Boyer. A reminder, 3 Eastern, Bud Pole qualifying live here on Speed from the Michigan International Speedway. And coming up next, Jeff Hammond, give us some sound effects.
Formula One. Formula One practice from Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
U.S. Grand Prix here on Speed. Casey Kane's going to take to the garage.
He did pick up just a little bit, just so our viewers know. He went up to 22nd quickest. They're still working on it. Maybe they'll get it faster yet.
Coming up, Formula One practice for the U.S. Grand Prix. And again, Bud Pole qualifying at 3 Eastern here on Speed. Have a happy Father's Day weekend. And keep it here on Speed as we follow all the racing across America.